Welcome to the roast along video for the Behmor roaster. We're really excited about this because if you just unwrap this thing for Christmas, we want you to be able to immediately roast amazing coffee out of the gate. Unlike my first roast, your first roast, everyone else's first roast, which is usually undrinkable.
Right.
We want you to actually enjoy this, know how to do it, and we're going to go through the process of setup, environment prep, absolutely everything you need to do to get this roaster running and making you great coffee out of the gate.
My name's Catherine Mansell. I'm the director of Current Crop Roasting Shop in New Orleans.
And I'm Stephen Burnett. I work at Coffee Bean Corral, and I do marketing, coffee roasting, QC, and things like that. So we wrote up 10 commandments for roasting with the Behmor, and we're going to go over those right now.
Sure. To start, you always want to roast in a well-ventilated area. With the Behmor, it has a built-in smoke suppression, so it's not going to look like there's a lot of smoke emitting as you're roasting, but once you hit the cool down button, that's when the smoke's going to come up. So make sure you're in a well ventilated area. Some people like to roast in their garage. If you want to roast on top of your stove with that vent, please make sure that vent is ready to do some work.
That's right. We have these vents here, these range hood vents, and they work really well for pulling smoke out. If you have kind of a standard home one, it may not be sufficient.
Right.
You may have to hit the button on your fire alarm. You never know. But that's number one. Number two is everything on this roaster is hot. Now, we'll talk about how to put this together in a second, but especially when you pull everything out, or if you have to stop the roast in the middle in the future for any reason, all that metal's hot and it's kind of cumbersome to deal with. So everything's hot. The top of it gets hot. There's warnings all over this roaster that say, don't touch this, it's hot. So be sure to keep that in mind and don't burn yourself. Keep a towel or a hot hand or a pot holder, something like that nearby that you can use.
Next is run the whole cool down phase, especially with this roaster. That cool down phase is going to continue the actual roast of the coffee. So if you need to stop and pull the beans out, the beans aren't going to be finished with the roast that you chose.
Mm-hmm. That and also running the full cool down cools the coffee as well as the roaster. So it'll keep the roaster working for you a long time into the future. Okay. Number 4 is don't use an extension cord. Okay, it can be tempting, especially if you want to roast outside to avoid the smoke. But if you use an extension cord, what happens is it saps the voltage. You don't get as much voltage to the machine for the heating elements, all of that, because you've used that extension cord or power strip or anything like that. So plug directly into the wall. You want to use a dedicated 15. It can run on a 15 amp circuit or 20 amps, even better. In my house, if I have the microwave on and the roaster, the breaker flips. That's on the 15. So keep that in mind. But dedicated 15 amp is plenty. Just plug directly into the wall.
Always roast above 55 degrees ambient temperature. Any extreme heat or extreme cold is going to negatively affect the roaster, and you'll notice that it's not getting up to temperature like it should, so try to roast above 55 degrees.
That's exactly right. And be mindful of the little ones. Like I said, everything on this is hot, and as you pull things out and fiddle with it, little kids get curious and they tend to want to pull on things and grab stuff. I've got a son at home that does that kind of thing. So be mindful of them. Yeah. Make sure kids and grandkids are out of the room or out of the area when you're roasting, just to keep them safe.
Yeah. Next is clean out the chaff. When we go over the parts of the roaster here in a minute, you'll see that the chaff collector is just sitting right there on the bottom. So before every roast and after every roast, please make sure that this inside of this roaster is completely clean of chaff. Another part of that, and the chaff is very flammable, and that's a big problem with roasters. Another part of that is to make sure you're roasting in a non-cluttered area. I just bumped into some of my clutter right here. So we have a bunch of sound equipment, but keep the area clear. You don't want a bunch of papers. You don't want a bunch of flammable objects. You don't want things that'll be in your way when you're trying to operate this roaster. So roast in a clear and non-cluttered environment. Next is use an external timer. So when you start the Behmor, you'll go with your settings and you'll hit start. Right when you hit start, you want to start an outside timer as well. This helps you keep track of your roast. Just like every other roast video that we've done, we talk about making sure that you write down everything that's happening in your roast. For the Behmor, you're going to write down all of the steps that you're taking, and that outside timer is going to be helpful.
That's exactly right. This roaster does almost everything for you, from the heat up to the cool down. It's all done by the roaster. We're showing you a manual way of doing it, but it's really important for you to know exactly how long it was between the beginning of the roast and the start of the cool down phase. And then the cool down phase is a set time. And so, but if you know those two numbers, then you can go, okay, I added a little bit of time here, a little bit of time there to get my roast degree exactly where I wanted it. If you record that, then you'll be able to basically build out your own recipe for roasting coffee.
Yeah.
Every coffee roasts a little bit differently, but if you know how I roasted this coffee, for example, today, the Don Enrique Reserve that you have in your roast along pouch, how I roasted that coffee is how I can roast it again the next time to get similar results.
Right.
Okay, so that's the 10 commandments of roasting. Go back, get everything set up ahead of time before we do the next phase. So if you're sitting there surrounded by wrapping paper on the floor, not a good place to roast your coffee. Get to that clear environment, get to a well ventilated area, and we'll do the next step here of the roasting process on this Behmor.
Yeah.
Okay, welcome back. We're going to go over the parts of the roaster. So, Catherine, take it away.
Sure. So there are three main parts to the Behmor roaster. You have the roaster itself, the body of the roaster. You have the rotating drum, and then you have the chaff collector here. Can you hold that?
Yeah, absolutely.
So for the chaff collector, this sits right underneath the drum on the inside of the roaster. This pulls back right here, this little handle. So this flattens out to go underneath the drum. Then it pops back up so it sits right underneath the rotating drum. This part here, pull it all the way up to clean out the roaster, and then push it down when you're going to roast.
This chamber here, the roasting drum itself, has got a really easy to open lid right here. Just push that little clip up and you can pour the coffee in here. Same way you unload it, you'll push that up and then you'll dump the coffee into your container. And it's installed, the ends are different. And so on this side, it's a square and it goes into the motor, the gearbox there that's turning it. And so when you load this in, we'll show you how to do that in a second. You want to put the square piece in first and then slide this over on top of the bracket. So it's just resting on this bracket, but it's in this over here so that it can turn the chamber and roast the coffee evenly. There's also a button for a light underneath here. We really recommend you do that so you can see the coffee while it's roasting. The visuals aren't great, especially after you do quite a few roasts. There'll be some of the smoke and some of the oil will get on the screen.
Yeah.
So I recommend cleaning that off every now and then so you get the clearest visual you can on the coffee, but also record those roasts so that even if you can't see the coffee, you know where it's at because you know you've done it before.
Right. All right, now it's time to load up the Behmor. We've got 8 ounces of the Colombia Don Enrique, and we've used this in every video. It's a favorite both at Current Crop and at Coffee Bean Corrals. Nice chocolatey coffee with nice cherry notes, very sweet finish. So the full 8 ounces that you got in your sample pack is going to go right into the drum. Okay. All right, close it up.
All right, we'll move that chaff basket out of the way. The drum goes first, and then the chaff basket goes in after. So we're locking that square peg into the opening right there on the control panel side, the right side of the roaster.
Yeah.
So it hangs there nice. You can kind of see it's got some good, you can rotate it a little bit, that's perfect. And then when you load this in, the chaff collector in, be sure to pull that trigger so it flattens out those stainless steel bars there until you're all the way up under there. It fits pretty snug.
Yeah.
All right, we'll close the lid now, or the door, I guess. Now, when this is running, air will be circulating throughout the roaster all the time. So if you open the door to take a look at the coffee, chaff will get everywhere. So we recommend keeping that door shut until it's fully turned off, and judging what you can through the window there. Recommend running with the light on so you can see really well how the coffee is developing, what stage you're at, and of course listening. Smelling, get to know the coffee as it's roasting through sight, sound, and smell. Okay, so we're going to start this up. So what are we going to do for our initial conditions here?
So we're going to go with the 1/2 setting here. Then we're going to get P1, which is the highest temperature setting. And then when we hit start, we're also going to hit start on our outside timer as well. So Stephen, if you'll grab that one. 3, 2, 1, go.
There we go.
Great.
Okay, so we're roasting now. take it a minute to get up to temperature, and we track this outside timer, like I said, so that when we take our notes, we know exactly how long this roaster went, so we can replicate the roast from time to time, from roast to roast.
Right.
So you can see the coffee's turning in there. You'll see the heating elements on the back wall begin to turn red as they heat up, and it gets really hot. So do keep your hands clear of that.
It looks just like the oven at home.
Yeah.
Because if you open the oven, you see the heating elements up top, and they're turning orange. And when you look inside the Behmor, you can see the back heating elements turning orange. So it not only looks like an oven, it's built like an oven as well.
When people call in and say, "I want that." There's a roaster. It does a pound. It looks kind of like a toaster oven. You know, It looks like an appliance. Like it does, but it does a full pound at a time. Now we're only doing half a pound. We sent you the half-pound sample.
Yeah.
If you did a full pound, it would be a very similar process.
Right.
You would press the 1 pound button, then P1, and then start.
Right.
And this is just the way we do it. This is the easiest and simplest way. You get really good coffee out of it. But it's very much the manual way of doing it. Of course, you can go in and learn how to do the programming. There's a whole bunch of things that this roaster can do, and if you just hop on YouTube, there are people that that are experts at this roaster that can tell you any and everything you want to know. But we just wanted you to have a good experience on the front end.
Right.
So so we like this Don Enrique though.
We do. It's been a favorite for a long time. I think the owner, John's wife, is a big fan of Colombian coffee in general, so we tend to stick pretty close to those.
Yeah, and I like this one because as it roasts, it just swells up so nicely. The beans get really plump. They're evenly colored. The first time I roasted this coffee, I told my wife, this is the first time I've ever roasted coffee. That's how it felt. I was like, everything else before now has just been me wasting my time, and now I finally roasted some good coffee. So we're starting you off with some really good coffee that'll be a wonderful experience if you've never roasted before, or if you've never roasted this one before.
Right. So if you bought the Behmor, then I'm sure you've read some reviews and kind of looked through everything. The manual is extensive. When I first got into coffee, I wanted to learn how to use the Behmor and tried to just read through the manual, and it didn't make much sense to me. It took a little while for me to understand the verbiage, to understand all the words. So if you know anything about home roasting in general, most of it will probably make sense. I knew nothing at all, so it took me a minute to get through it. But once you open it up and you see all of the steps, it helps you get familiar with the roaster, and it helps you learn the roaster so you can get the best use out of it.
Yeah. And we're following Joe Beam, the manufacturer, the owner of Behmor, his advice to keep it simple.
Keep it simple.
He made a device that can be very, very complicated. He really did. But when he roasted coffee for us, he did it exactly the way we're showing you right now.
Yeah.
Very simply, very easy, and you can do a full pound at a time. Now we're just doing half, but you can do a full pound at a time in this roaster, which that's one of the main selling points of this roaster, is that you can do that. And the cool down phase is a long time.
Right.
And so for this video, for the roast along, we're going to carry you to the point of cool down and maybe say a few other words, and then we'll come back when the coffee's finished cooling and roasting, because we don't want to give you a really, really long video. We wanted you to give you something useful. But when we go away, keep it roasting, let it cool down all the way, and then you can see what you've got on your end, and we'll show you what we've got on our end too. Yeah, what are we looking at right now?
So just a few minutes into it.
3 minutes and 52 seconds.
Yep, the paddles are steadily moving all of the beans around to get an even roast. So what we're really waiting for, once this outside timer and the timer on the Behmor gets to a certain point, your unattended safety feature is going to start beeping. Just like every other new roaster, it's got an unattended safety feature for safety fire purposes. So once it starts beeping, we're going to hit the start button, so it'll finish out the initial time sequence. And what we're really looking for is we're listening for those cracks today. So once we hit start, it'll continue. When we need more time, we'll hit the C button. So the C button is your friend. It's definitely the easiest way to continue to add time when your beans haven't gotten to the point you want them to be at yet. So that's what we're going to be waiting for. We're waiting for the unattended safety feature and for the time to run out, and then listening for those cracks today.
Because this is a manual way of roasting, we're not going off of the timer on the display to tell us when the coffee's ready.
Right.
We're listening, we're looking to see what we want it to do. And that's kind of why we're guiding it through the process, because if you've never roasted coffee before, if you've never used a Behmor before, you may not know, okay, I know if you've roasted coffee, you know what you want, but you don't know how to get it on here.
Right.
If you've never roasted before, you may say, I don't even know what I want, what I'm looking at here.
Right.
So we wanted to help with that, to show you what that's going to look like. But yeah, the Behmor is very much an all-inclusive, everything you need in a roaster.
Right.
It's going to take care of all the roasting. It's going to suppress that smoke until the cool sequence, when it will start flushing some cold air in there and cool those beans down. And it'll really handle all of it for you. When you get these out, they'll be cool, and then it's just a matter of cleaning up the chaff.
Right.
And if you want to go again, roast again.
Right.
Now, this is not designed, according to the manufacturer, for dark roasting. But if you wanted to go a little darker, what are some advice you'd have for some people?
I try to stay away from beans that have an excess amount of chaff. So any natural processes and some honey processes as well, just because of the process in general, that silver skin is really hanging on to the raw bean during the fermentation. So even after it's been washed and dried out, the silver skin is still there, a lot more so than there is in a wash process. So if you are going to go for a darker roast, try to use a wash process or a decaf coffee. They don't have any chaff.
Right, no chaff. Everything's been taken out of that decaf coffee. And that is something else. So also, another thing you can do, we have a half pound in here. This is a washed coffee. The chaff should be pretty minimal.
Yeah.
If you want to use a really chaffy coffee and you want to take it darker, you may want to reduce the size of your initial charge.
Sure.
Because if you have a half pound of coffee, that's literally half the chaff of a full pound of coffee, which makes it safer, and it makes it easier for the roaster to actually get to that darker level. Again, they don't recommend dark, but look on the internet. You can find a lot of stuff.
Right. And this isn't a set it and forget it type of roaster. Every roaster that we sell at Coffee Bean Corral goes to very high temperatures. None of these roasters are meant for you to set it and walk off.
Right.
All of these need your attention throughout the entirety of the roast. So don't set it and forget it. This one has a light on, which is really helpful because you're not only looking at the beans as they progress in the roast, but you're also looking out for any chaff that's flying around. So if you're going into really high temperatures and you got a chaffy coffee, you need to lean down and pay attention, because if it gets too hot, you'll see some of that chaff catch on fire. So you need to be aware of what's going on. So don't walk away from a roast. Anything can happen at these extreme temperatures.
That's exactly right. It's not just that you can get burned, it's also that with the chaff, you can have a chaff fire, and nobody wants that. And that's why they put these features in. That's why they build them the way that they do. But it does take us to use common sense as roasters, be responsible, and make sure that we're not just plugging this in and we're going to go do something on the other side of the house for, it'll be fine. And thankfully, this machine won't let you do that. It will beep at you, and it will call you to come back. And if you don't come back, it says, well, these beans are done. And it will cool down mode that. So that is something definitely to be aware of. Got 3 minutes and 36 seconds left. We're at 8 minutes and 25 on the roast. You can already see the color on these beans is changing. It's getting a little darker. We should be, I would expect to start first crack here in a couple of minutes. Now, if you've never roasted before, one of the biggest, if not the biggest, kind of landmark milestone in a roast is what we call first crack. It's the same principle as popcorn popping. It's the moisture inside the bean expanding and cracking the coffee just like popcorn. Pop! And just like popcorn, the beans get larger, they fluff up, they don't have that weird, crunchiness to them. They're not quite delicious to chew on, but, unattended safety feature.
Right, so now I'm going to hit the start button, and the rest of the time that was already on the front panel is going to continue. So now it's counting down. We're right at 2:45, counting down. So now what we're doing is we're listening for those cracks. So as it continues to count down, my next step, what I'm going to do if the time runs out, is I'm going to hit that C button to add more time. So it continues to roast, so we take it to that first crack where we want it to go.
And that, again, is why it's important to have an external timer, because as you're adding time, you don't know, did I add it 3 times? How much time did I add? This will be really helpful to know. I pressed cool when it was, 10 minutes and 20 seconds, or whatever it is. Okay. Go. I mean, I heard something. I can't tell. It's a very quiet roaster, which I appreciate. Oh, did you hear that? Okay.
Couple snaps.
A couple of snaps. Now, when we say first crack, there's some confusion. Sometimes people think, oh, first crack is the first snap that I hear, right?
Right.
Well, that's first crack is a time period within the roast. It's a reaction that has to take place in all the beans in the roast. And so the first snap may be the smallest bean. That was the easiest, first one to heat up, right?
Right.
And so it snapped. Well, now you've got the first crack of first crack, or the start of first crack.
Yeah.
But we really don't count first crack until we start to hear a couple of them go at once.
Yeah.
Same thing like popcorn, right? You may hear one or two pop, and then the whole body of them begin, popping one after another,
Right.
and it gets pretty robust.
Yeah.
Depending on the coffee, some coffees are like fireworks in here. They just pop, 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 pop. You can't miss it. Some of them are very subtle.
Right.
And this one's kind of in the middle. You'll hear it, but it won't be, and I don't know if the microphones will pick it up or not, but you'll be able to hear it at home roasting along with us as it gets to that point.
Okay.
We're under a minute again.
So now the front panel, the time is blinking. So I'm going to hit the C button, which adds 2 minutes.
There we go.
So again, we're still waiting for that first crack to start. Now we've heard some sporadic pops, but we want a continuous first crack before we cool the beans down.
Right. And as Catherine pointed out earlier, the beans are still roasting in that cool down phase. And so if you pull these beans out of the roaster, it'd be very hard to do that, and it's very hard to do that safely.
Very hot.
But they wouldn't roast the way you want them to. So this is really designed to do the full cool down within the Behmor itself. And so it's just a matter of you entering that cool down mode when you're ready.
Right.
Now, we're going to try and get these to a medium roast, right? What we say?
Yeah, a City Plus, maybe
City
a light
Plus.
medium,
Yeah,
like we did on the
lighter
other
side
one.
medium. There you go, lighter side medium. If you want to carry this on darker, how long do you think they should go with it? If they wanted to do like a medium dark, something like that, obviously.
So I would continue to wait and add time until, for a medium dark, you want to hear the first couple of snaps of that second crack and then cool it down, because it's going to go a little bit further. You'll hear the first couple of pops, and then the cool down mode will happen. So you'll be right at a solid full City Plus if you wait for the snaps, the second crack.
And second crack is a little bit lighter. Now, I don't know if you can hear that. We've heard a couple, 3 or 4 good solid pops. Here we go. So now we're in first crack. We're in first crack at 12 minutes and 44 seconds. There we go. And so like I said, if you wanted to go to like a darker side of medium, wait until first crack will subside. And then you'll begin to hear lighter, kind of like people describe like Rice Krispies when you pour milk on them, kind of snapping more than cracking. But it does get pretty, pretty robust with the amount of cracks and snaps compared to first crack. Nice. Okay, we're well into first crack now.
Right.
Okay.
So since we've got just about 1 minute and 15 seconds left on the timer on the roaster, we're going to let it continue and let it continue all the way until the time runs out, and it's going to go into the cool down phase.
Yeah. Now, if you're at home and you've got yours started roasting a little bit earlier, you may want to intercool down a little before we do. If you're at home and yours you haven't had that first crack really start getting robust, you may want to wait a little bit longer. These machines are different from one another. I mean, what I always do, it's very helpful to record these things for this roaster. But sometimes if you line 10 of these up, they're going to produce little different results from one another. It's just the truth. With any of these roasters, our fresh roast, our Gene Cafe is the same kind of thing. So just keep that in mind. Right. This is a manual way of doing it, and so you want to make sure that you're paying attention and you get the coffee that you would like to get out of it.
So the whole last minute, the panel with the time on the roaster is steadily blinking, and now it's beeping to let us know there's 10 seconds left. Once this time runs out, it will automatically go into cool down mode.
There we go. Which means we nailed it.
We nailed it.
Okay. Cool down mode is 13 minutes long, so let it run the full cool down. This machine will be pulling much less energy throughout that cool down mode because it's not using the heating elements, just using the fan and the motor to turn the drum. So yeah, what we'll do is we'll step away now. You keep yours running on cool, and then we'll come back after ours is finished and show you the finished product.
Right.
Okay.
Stay
Thanks very
tuned.
much. Okay, we've got about 15 seconds left on this cool down phase. I've already snuck a peek up close in there. It's looking pretty
Looking
good.
good, yeah.
So as soon as this is finished, it'll stop rolling. We'll open this up. We'll show you how to take it apart, and we'll show you what to expect. Okay, so it shut off.
Yeah. And during that cool down phase, it's not going to be incredibly hot when you touch the chaff collector, when you touch the rotating drum. And as you can see with this wash process, there's not an excessive amount of chaff, which is great. Now,
But there is some chaff.
there is some chaff, yes, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Pull that out. Same way you lift up the left side and pull it out.
Can I
Here
show
we
you a
go.
trick?
Please.
Can I show you
Love
a chaff trick?
Chaff trick.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
So any excess chaff that's on the inside of this,
there we go.
shake it out.
Well, it's good to have that vacuum handy as well.
Right.
Love the
All
chaff
right.
trick.
Pop
There we
this
go.
up. We'll dump it.
Now you got to
right
watch pouring
here.
this too, because those fins on the very end want to shoot your coffee out to the side.
Right.
So be careful with that. And you may have to do a couple, like what she's doing here, a couple of runs at it to get it all out of there without making a major mess.
Yeah.
This roaster is excellent for roasting up to a pound of coffee. Does a really great job, but it does require a little bit of extra cleaning. You can see in there we've got some chaff underneath the chaff collector.
Right.
Before we use this again, we're going to take our vacuum. We're going to vacuum all of this out. We're going to clean out our chaff collector and even the basket, vacuum that basket a little bit. But that looks absolutely beautiful. Sit down on top of there, maybe they can see it. That is looking absolutely beautiful.
It's perfect.
Perfect roast, exactly what we wanted. I hope
Yeah.
you guys enjoyed yours. And we have a deal coming up in a couple of days. On the 3rd of January, we're going to be doing a live stream event. So the person that got you this roaster right here, whether that was you or whether that was somebody else, they also got you access to our live stream event.
Right.
We're going to talk roasting. We're going to do some Q&A. So whatever questions you have from this process, the other roasts you do in between now and then, just come on and let us know.
Yeah. We'll answer your questions live on the stream.
Yeah, and you can talk to us if you want to. I don't know if you want to do that, but you could. But yeah, so thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you got some really good coffee out of it. You learned something. And besides that, just have a wonderful day.
Yep. Happy roasting.
Happy roasting.